there, and welcome to my Fashion Stories Box podcast, a podcast about stories in fashion history. I am Catherine, and I'm so glad to welcome you here. Let's discover together interesting facts about fashion and history and fashion history. For this new episode of my Fashion Stories Box podcast, I decided to talk about Christian Dior. However, I didn't want to do another biography of the designer who changed fashion after the Second World War. I decided to focus on his relationship with flowers. From his childhood in Normandy to the global fashion empire he built, flowers have always held a special place in Dior's heart and designs. Let's explore together how these blooms influenced his life and legacy. There is no need to introduce Christian Dior anymore. As I am pretty sure you all know, he was a renowned French fashion designer who revolutionized the fashion industry with his iconic New Look collection in 1947. He was born in 1905 in Granville, Normandy, to a wealthy family. His father was a successful fertilizer manufacturer. Christian Dior had several lives. In the 20s, he opened an art gallery in Paris and entered the Parisian artistic scene. After the Wall Street crash of 1929 and his family's financial ruin, he started selling fashion sketches to make ends meet. This led to jobs as fashion illustrator and later as a designer for prominent couturiers of the time like Robert Piguet and particularly Lucien Lelon. In 1946, with financial backing from wealthy textile entrepreneur Marcel Boussac, Christian founded his own fashion house at the age of 41. On February 12, 1947, he launched his first collection, dubbed the New Look, by Carmel Snow, the influential editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar, who said to him, "It's quite a revolution, dear Christian. Your dresses have such a new look." And indeed, this first collection revolutionized women's fashion with its nipped-in waists and full calf-length skirts, a strong contrast to the masculine boxy shapes, utilitarian styles of wartime fashion of the past decade. Moreover, thanks to him, Paris won the fashion war and claimed back its status of fashion capital and center of trends. Let's stop a moment and look at the main characteristics of Christian Dior's New Look. The New Look silhouette features rounded shoulders, a nipped-in waist, a bust line emphasized with padding, and very full skirts falling below the calves, creating an exaggerated hourglass silhouette. The bar jacket with its curved shoulders and peplum detailing became an iconic design, using copious amounts of fabrics and reviving the spirit of luxury and femininity in fashion. His designs aim to flatter the female form, using copious amounts of rich fabrics like silks and brocades to create a sense of luxury and indulgence after the austerity of the war years. His clothes embodied an extravagant, almost architectural quality. For the creation of his New Look designs, luxurious materials as silk and brocades have been used in lengths as 9 meters, 15 meters, even up to 25 meters depending on the models. For comparison, a utilitarian dress worn during the war was done with 3 meters of fabrics. To create the skirt from the bar suit, 12 meters of fabrics were needed, and for the diorama dress, 26 meters. As you could imagine, this overconsumption didn't sit well in post-war Russian France, and this created quite a bit of scandals, though I learned recently these scandals might also have been staged by the designer for publicity. In his autobiography, Dior and I, Christian Dior justified himself as follows. I am of a reactionary temperament. We were just emerging from a parsimonious, deprived era obsessed with tickets and textile points. My dream would therefore naturally be the form of a reaction against this poverty. At the heart of his style, femininity, softness, delicacy, fragility, which were for him the essence of women, and a wish to put in the past the horrors of the war and the loss of femininity, with women being either soldiers, reduced to reproduction purposes, war prisoners, or concentration camp survivors, as his sister Catherine Dior. Drawing inspiration from the romanticism of the 19th century with corsetry, hip padding, and historical references, Christian Dior wished to create an idealized vision of femininity. The 19th century being a rich moment in terms of silhouettes for women, the main ones we can spot in the early collections of Christian Dior would be the Romantic era, during which the dresses started to gain volumes with the crinolines, which shape echoes the 16th century farthingales, and the Belle Epoque period, when silhouettes became leaner but even more constructed with bustles and corsets, giving birth to the S-bend silhouette. For the Romantic period and the crinoline, you might have in mind this beautiful painting of the French Empress Eugénie, wife of Napoleon III, surrounded by her ladies-in-waiting, and done by Franz Xaver Winterhalter in 1855. We see a group of women beautifully seated in a natural landscape with flowers, themselves being depicted as flowers with the light colors of their dresses and the quantity of fabrics around them as petals. The painting gives a notion of lightness, delicacy, and femininity. Women are depicted as beautiful and fragile flowers blooming in a garden. This Romantic era, corresponding more or less to the Second Empire in France and the Victorian era in the UK, that is to say mid-19th century, can be noticed in the 1947 Christian Dior New Look. In both, we can see an exaggerated feminine silhouette with nipped-in waists achieved through bone corsetry and padding, rounded shoulders and accentuated bust lines, full voluminous skirts and crinolines, or equivalent for the New Look version. Here, Christian Dior had the desire to revive historical construction techniques from that period too, and drew on the 19th century dressmaking techniques with linings and boning to sculpt a similar hourglass silhouette and translate his vision of femininity. I wanted my dresses to be constructed, molded to the curves of the female body, whose shape they would stylize. I emphasized the size, the volume of the hips. I highlighted the chest. To give my models more hold, I lined them with or percale or taffeta fabrics, thus reviving a long-abandoned tradition, said Christian Dior. The extensive use of fabrics is another echo to the 19th century opulence. Another reference to the 19th century comes with the elongated, corseted torsos featured in these collections, inspired by the Belle Epoque period from around 1871 to 1914, and its S-bend silhouette. You can look at paintings from this time to have an idea of the silhouette, as those from artists as John Singer Sargent and his portrait of Madame X in 1883-1884, in which she wears a strikingly modern dress with her breasts in the focus and her waist underlined by a corset. Or have a look at paintings from Giovanni Baldini, portraying the Parisian high society members and displaying these Belle Epoque characteristic silhouettes, as seen in the painting Conversation in a Café from 1879 or Firework in 1892-99. This nostalgia from the past seems to be linked with a longing from happier times when everything seemed simpler, more beautiful. by reviving the romantic feminine ideals of the 19th century fashion through his iconic silhouettes, lavish construction techniques, and direct historical references. Dior's new look paid homage to the opulence and craftsmanship of an era that deeply influenced his design philosophy and aesthetics. And what about flowers in all of this? The Dior family had a home in Normandy known as Villa les Rampes, which was surrounded by lush gardens filled with variety of flowers. These gardens, meticulously tended by his mother Madeleine, became a sanctuary and a source of inspiration for young Christian. Dior's love for nature and flowers was instilled in him during his younger ages, and we can thank his mother Madeleine for that. Madeleine Dior might have not only influenced her son Christian with her love for flowers, but also her youngest daughter Catherine, who is said to have been the muse of the designer for his New Look collection and the Miss Dior perfume after her coming back from the concentration camp of Ravensbrück. After the war, Catherine will sell flowers in the Halles in Paris and then will move to the south of France, where she will go on her passion for horticulture and flowers, a passion she shared with her older brother, who will use it in his designs and perfumes. Christian Dior had a deep and lifelong fascination with flowers, motivated by his mother's love for them that significantly influenced design narratives and aesthetics. Floral motifs and inspirations permeated many aspects of his work. The vivid colors, intricate shapes, and delicate fragrances of the garden's flowers left an indelible mark on his imagination. His debut collection in 1947, famously known as the New Look, was in fact called Corolle in French, corolla in English, a direct reference to the petals of a flower. And indeed, if we look at the dresses from that collection, the silhouettes evoke blossoming flowers with their rounded shoulders, cinched waists, and full skirts, as we noted also from the 19th century crinolines. Whereas the setup of his first runway, 30 Avenue de Montaigne, has been described using blue delphiniums, pink sweet peas, and white lilies of the Valais. Flowers became part of the signature style and universe of the house. Dior often named his dresses after flowers as Rose France, Tulipe Noire, and Pâquerette. His creations weren't just inspired by the look of flowers, but also by their symbolic meanings, which, for him, embodying femininity, elegance, and renewal. He frequently incorporated floral patterns, embroideries, and prints into his collections, as the famous Tulip line of spring 1953, which featured an abundance of flowery prints, an obvious reference to the universe of flowers. His evening gowns and day dresses were often adorned with intricate floral embellishments and appliques inspired by garden blooms. The flower motif extended beyond just the names and shapes of Dior's garments. The intricate embroidery, prints, and fabric choices often reflected his botanical passion. Dior once said, "After women, flowers are the most lovely thing God has given to the world." This connection to flowers also influenced the choices of fabrics as delicate silks, chiffons, and tulles, evoking the softness and fragility of petals. His love for flowers didn't just stay in the realm of dresses and garments, it blossomed in his perfume creations as well. His first fragrance, Miss Dior, launched in 1947, was a tribute to the fragrant flowers of his childhood garden. The perfume featured a lush bouquet of roses, jasmine, and gardenia. J'adore and Diorissimo continued this tradition, featuring notes of jasmine, rose, and lily of the Valais. Each scent tells a story of Dior's lifelong passion for flowers and their ability to evoke emotions and memories. Flowers can also be found in the jewelry lines of the house. Created in 1998 and directed by Victoire de Castellane, the Dior jewelry department takes full inspiration from the founder's passion for flowers, and each collection giving the stage to the two favorite flowers of Christian Dior, the rose and the lily of the valley, looking at the plant's life cycle from buds to blossoms, shed petals and stems, from figurative to abstract interpretations. But flowers were also used as part of the brand imagery. Floral visuals and hats were integral to Dior's beauty advertising campaigns, notably for the launch of the first Rouge Dior lipstick in the 60s. While Dior runway shows and marketing frequently featured lush floral backdrops and set designs. Beyond aesthetics, flowers held symbolic meaning for Christian Dior, who was very superstitious and believed in signs and lucky charms. Christian held two particular flowers among his favorites, the rose and the lily of the valley. The roses evoked for him ideals of femininity and voluptuousness. This flower, also known as the Queen of all flowers, is featured prominently in his designs, perfumes, and brand imagery. His famous Miss Dior perfume contains notes of roses, among others, a scent described as the perfume of love. The lily of the valley, or muguet in French, and considered as a lucky charm flower which offered generally on May the 1st, represented for Christian Dior a return to happiness after the Second World War and the austerity of these dark years. A bit like the flower itself, blooming at the beginning of spring after the cold days of winter. Christian adopted this flower as his personal lucky charm and would offer it to his employees, clients, and would even wear it on his jacket. The lily of the valley became an iconic symbol for the house of Dior. It would be used extensively in the house perfumes, as in Diorissimo, as well as in the garments. In his autobiography, he wrote, "In the spring of 1955, I suggested the muguet line, inspired by my lucky flower, a line that was young, flexible, and simple, to which one color provided style, Paris blue." 3 years later, in the collection Libre, or Free, a dress will be dedicated to the favorite flower of the designer and called muguet, whose flounces are embroidered with bells, characteristics of the flower. A third flower could be added to the list, the tulip. The designer paid tribute to this flower in his spring 1953 collection dubbed the Tulip line and featuring an abundance of floral prints and patterns inspired by the iconic tulip bloom. Christian Dior said, "I drew women flowers, soft shoulders, fine waists like liana, and wide skirts like corolla." By incorporating floral motifs, embroideries, perfume notes, symbolic meanings, childhood memories, and even silhouette inspirations from flowers across his collections, brand imagery, and product lines, Christian Dior paid tribute to his lifelong passion for horticulture and nature's blooms in an indelible way. Today, the House of Dior continues to honor Christian Dior's floral legacy. The gardens at the Dior family home in Granville have been preserved, and flowers remain a central theme in Dior's contemporary collections. Designers like John Galliano, Ralph Simons, and Maria Grazia Curie have all drawn from Dior's floral inspirations, creating collections that celebrate the timeless beauty of flowers. John Galliano would make regular references to the late founder as the XXL Lily of the Valley brooch worn by Gisele Bündchen on a bar suit for the Fall-Winter 2007-2008 collection. For his first haute couture collection as creative director of the house, Raf Simons transformed the Hôtel Particulier in Paris into a garden with flowers as delphiniums, mimosa, and orchids all over the walls, as a nod to the first show of the couturier, while the dresses echoed the coral shape of the new look and prints and embroideries reinforced the flower essence of the house. Botanical inspirations are not absent from the current creative director's collections of the house, Maria Grazia Chiuri. The Spring-Summer 2020 collection was particularly inspired by the gardens, flowers, and by the figure of Catherine Dior, the sister of Christian. In an interview published on Vogue in September 2019, she said, Christian and Catherine Dior's mother, Madeleine, cultivated a beautiful garden at their family home in Granville, even though the weather there and its location overlooking the sea doesn't lend itself to growing flowers. Christian later wrote in his autobiography, Dior by Dior, that his life and style owed almost everything to the house and garden. After the horrors of the Second World War, I think they were both in search of beauty. Christian found it in couture and Catherine found it in flowers and plants. The message in this collection is the idea of taking care of everyone of the world we live in, just as Catherine Dior and other women in history took care of their gardens. All modern ideas of feminism talk about humans and nature and bringing these two worlds closer together again. Through his childhood experiences in Normandy's gardens, his admiration for his mother and younger sister, his penchant for floral motifs across collections, and the central role of flowers in his perfumes and brand imagery, the influence of florals on Christian Dior's design narratives and aesthetics cannot be overstated. Flowers were an enduring source of inspiration and meaning throughout his career. Christian Dior's relationship with flowers was more than just a source of inspiration. It was a lifelong love affair that permeated every aspect of his work. From the gardens of Granville to the runways of Paris, flowers have been a constant muse, symbolizing beauty, elegance, and creativity. Something you won't fail to notice if you happen to visit the Dior Gallery, Avenue de Montaigne in Paris. Flowers, historical inspiration, femininity, delicacy are everywhere. Thank you very much for having listened to this episode of my Fashion Stories Box podcast and followed Christian Dior's floral journey. Keep blooming. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen your podcast. Connect with me on Instagram and Facebook to complete the podcast with some visuals. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. I am Catherine and this is my Fashion Stories Box podcast, a podcast about stories in fashion history. See you next time for a new Fashion Story Box.